There's a lot of them who are influencers, but they're really infectious in our community because now they got gazillion million followers, and whatever they say kind of goes. But if one of us say who only got 800 followers, ain't nobody gonna listen to none of y'all. But those infectious influencers are really damaging our community. They have no credence into the ground level work, the mentality, the social wellness of our people, but yet they're out there spewing this garbage that people are eating it up because they're seeing either the money they made, the influence they got, the houses and cars, and they're saying this must be it. We're so indoctrinized into the capitalistic system of our society that whatever happens on social media we perceive as being real, so we chase that, and we have such aspirations, we collectively, not generally, there's so much aspirations for what they have. If we try and challenge that, we become the haters. We become the people that they cancel. Again, shout out to my lovely wife, Jack. We be challenging these folk every week, and we get scores of emails, but we're speaking truth to power, and we're calling it out because we can't have these infectious people who are quote-unquote influencers trying to change the mindset of our youth.
Hey, welcome, everybody. Welcome. Facebook, YouTube, everybody watching, man. We got Jeff Jones in the house tonight. We got Chris Jr., we got Devin, we got myself. We're going to kick it off tonight, man. But first, always, above average black men. Empower, inspire, uplift, and community. We're talking about the pandemic, man. Uncovered a lot of stuff for a lot of people. I counsel, so I have couples who now, instead of going to work and coming home, they home. It's not pretty. It's not pretty. Yeah, you got boyfriend, girlfriend who spend all this time together now. Because they're going out circle and they're starting to uncover things about each other that, see, when you go home it's a different ballgame.
So personal.
And what we were just talking about was, we have those parents who they always blame the teacher, not the kid. And they're like, yo, Mr. Pender, it is Little Johnny. Because I've been trapped in the house of Little Johnny since this pandemic. When is school going to open? So we're going to talk about that and get into a lot of different things. But Jeff, man, tell us a little about who you are and what you do.
Sure. Thanks again for having me on the show. I've been an avid listener and supporter of the show, so it's an honor to be on the show myself. Jeff Jones, community organizer, radio show host of my own rights, and owner of GGA Consulting, which is a consulting agency that helps to build empowering communities throughout the tri-state area. Had an opportunity to do some work nationally as well, so I'm just excited again about the opportunity to be on the show to talk about this very important topic.
So let's talk more about what you do, man. So first question is, why do you do what you do?
I definitely want you to kind of dig into, again, like maybe your title and how you got to where you were. I know you and I kind of talked about this when we bumped into the store the other day. And it's something that, I kind of briefly talked about my background and working with kids. I think what's important and gets missed sometimes when you talk about kids is that there's a home part of this aspect. Sometimes you kind of pin kids and say, these kids are bad, they're not doing this, but they aren't getting certain things at home that attribute to those actions. And sometimes their parents don't even know necessarily what they're doing or what they're not doing. So definitely, kind of based off our conversation, wanted to get you in here tonight and kind of really dig into that, how you got there, and if you could just explain a little bit as to what your role is.
Yeah, sure. So if I could just give a backdrop of my experience what led me to this is that, been doing this work for community building for like 20 plus years, but it's all based upon my background. I'm a recovering alcoholic. And through that transition, being even homeless for some small period of time, I realized throughout that transition that there was greater days ahead, right? And that's what birthed my organization, Greater Days Ahead. So from that transition, from being homeless to being an alcoholic, to realizing that there was greater days ahead for me, I had a sense of empathy and sympathy for individuals who are traveling through transitional periods in their life. So that allowed for me to connect to my community when I got myself recovered and on the right path to being a stable individual again. I was able to speak to youth and understand again their challenges because I was once that, right? So for me, it's always building the understanding of that I'm no greater than anybody else. As the expression goes, only by the grace of God, there go I. So my compassion for understanding of the struggle was built in the fact that I too have a testimony in the struggle myself. So overcoming that allowed me to also begin to speak to youth, and then Greater Days Ahead morphed into GDA Consulting because I then began to connect with organizations such as United Way, Be Me Community, and My Brother's Keeper, and got a little national recognition through those organizations. Got a gold medal award from Barack Obama for great volunteer work. United Way fellow, gold badge for that. So not bragging, but just showing that.
That's awesome. That's what you're here for. Go ahead.
So I had opportunities to get recognized for that level of community outreach and work. And I began just building my social capital and individuals who understood what it means to do grassroots work. that is my bane and my passion, grassroots organizing. Now, of course, I know how to do upper level management organizing as well, because I had an opportunity to get certified at the University of Pennsylvania in organization strategic design. So I'm skilled in that level, but I really am passionate about grassroots level work, because those are the people, such as all of us here, who are doing the work, who are making a difference. Me and my wife, we host the show, Community Voice PHL Talk Show, and we get into it about individuals and organizations that are just doing some bamboozling and fudge duckery that's going on.
I like that fudge duckery.
So you know, because we understand that it's individuals who want to ground and making a difference. And for me, when I see families and I see youth in particular who are not getting the resources and services that they need, it really frustrates me, because I know throughout my transition, if there weren't people who were giving me those opportunities, I would not be here today. I would still be someone maybe wandering, maybe still, you know, doing some things that I should not have. But I know the benefits of having individuals who are sincere about helping those in need. And so when I see some of these individuals and organizations who are not doing it, again, me and my wife, we call them out every week as much as we can. So my passion is behind that, and that's kind of like my testimony. And you know, the strength of my work is the experience that I had. And, you know, that gives me the remembrance of, hey, you got to remember that was you once, you know. And then not in the same instance, but in the same essence, that was me once. So I'm trying to pull people from that place to give them the hope, because it's always greater days ahead, no matter what your struggle is.
I think that is important in your story, like the relatability, because a lot of times, I mean, I said this maybe a couple weeks ago, people see a finished product and they make assumptions, you know, based off of maybe how you carry yourself and what you look like. But when you start to share those stories and you humanize yourself and you can connect, and it makes it easier to kind of, you know, be able to show them, like you said, greater days ahead.
What do you think they see a finished product? Most of us are still, we're still working, we're still growing. And I'm glad you said it, because I have this conversation with people all the time, man. And that's the difference between pursuing excellence and mediocrity. Mediocrity, you think you've arrived. You know, you get a little bit of success, man. Now, you know, you think you've arrived, and there's so much more to do. There's so much more to conquer. You know, and I love the name Great Days Ahead, and I think, you know, I'm a little disappointed because you didn't tell that story before. No, I say that because that's what, well, you know me, because you know me, I'm always trying to put people who look like my kids before their kids. And the reason why I said it, because especially now with all of the opiate epidemic and all the stuff going on, you know, a lot of these kids don't see they can get out their environment. You know, so when they hear that story, it's like, yo, you know, me too. You know, me too. You know, and the difference is they don't have to get, you know.
And one part about that, Chris, is that I shared that story with all the youth last week when we were working together. I shared that story with them kids, and they were looking at me like, really? You?
Because inner city kids, you know, they see the pitfalls. They don't meet many people who overcome the pitfalls.
So, my next question would be like, where do you see yourself taking this program, you know, down the road within, like, you know, the next 5, 10, 15 years?
Yeah, so that's a great question, because again, this is everything that I'm doing now, or I should say everything that we're doing, because me and my wife are working collaboratively on this, is to help build stable and caring communities all across the nation. We're using our show, Community Voice, as a voice to get resources and information out to people. So to answer your question, where I see this at, say 5 years from now, we're making connections out in Oakland, so we're hoping to stretch that far west. And just to build strong, caring communities with resources, educational, informational, political, and socially, resources in every major city across the nation, through, you know, lenses and programs, platforms such as this and others that we partner with. So that's kind of our vision and our goal, because none of us are as smart as all of us. And one thing that I always say is that we're not outnumbered. Often we're out-organized, and if we can get to a space of being more organized, we can strategically make power movements in certain areas. So that's where I see ourselves in 5 years from now.
And what I like about it is you empower the next generation. I mean, too many times we get these grandiose ideas and visions, and we leave folk behind. You know, and then when we die, it dies. The movement dies, the cause dies, the dream dies, because we didn't empower anybody to come behind us. And I think that's why I'm so proud and glad to hear you say that, because a lot of times I got an idea, you know, I'm gonna run this idea, but nobody else comes along in the journey. So now I get 75, 80 years old, I can no longer do it, and it dies.
And that's one of the things. Shout out to my lovely wife, Jacqueline Jordan. Want to give a shout out to that.
If I knew, you know, I would have invited you. I'm sorry, because I was on your show, so I wasn't that clear.
You was on that show?
That was the show you was making funny of me about. Y'all were listening, making funny because they would tear me up because I gave my phone up. He gave his phone up. I actually joined it. You know, I actually joined the station and everything.
Oh, did you?
Yeah,
that's what's up. That's what's up. Cool. So, what we are doing, what me and Jack were doing, making sure we can have legacy building information along the way, because that's again one of the things that we do when we're creating these programs. And Jacqueline has her own entity called Kinetic Soul Media, which is the theater and creative art space. And so we're really out there making sure we can build and develop communities in various different ways, but legacy building work, you know, so that, you know, it's one thing, like you say, when we're no longer on this side of the Jordan, who's going to be able to maintain the mantle at that point? So we're making sure we have young girls doing that, young boys, and everyone else. So we're about legacy building in that capacity, creating that voice that's sustainable and achievable for the future of our community. So it's because it's at the end of the day, Chris, you know, Deb and Chris, it's not about us. You know what I mean? It's really not about us. I mean, they could look at me and say, oh, you achieved all this, or look at you all and say, y'all. But at the end of the day, it's about what we left behind. You know, it's you know, like the expression that's in the movie Black Panther. You look at the village. And if you don't love the children, they'll burn it down just to feel their warmth, right? And right now, some of our kids got matches in their hands. They're ready to burn it
You saw I
down.
had a front row seat.
Yeah.
And that was kind of bringing it back to, like you said, the struggle is real right now.
Yeah,
And
it's real.
you mentioned that all of these resources that, you know, you like to kind of bring together. I wanted to kind of dig more into some of those resources. You know, like what resources are available that you generally work with that you can provide to kind of the community out here?
Yeah, most of the resources that I have are individuals such as Reuben Jones, who has a program, Frontline Dads, who provides help and information to help dads not just transition from incarceration, but dads who are just needing help with resources how to raise their child if they're a single dad, or just assistance to raise their child if they have a family. So organizations like that, I have Connie Greer from the Respect Alliance, who does educational work to make sure that students are up to par educationally, not just at average passing statistical standardized tests, but achieving their career goals academically. I have a good friend, Sharif El-Mekki, who many of you may know, who has a Black Male Educators Convening.
My neighbor.
Yeah, yeah, so there you go. So, you know, we can provide resources on how to get educators in the right space who look like us, and teaching children who look like us, so there's a cultural relativism there. Then I have my good friend, Mike James from Budget Me, giving financial literacy and information. So, you know, we have a wealth of information that is out there. Then we even have on the athletic side, my friend Eric Worley. I don't know if you know Eric Worley, but Philadelphia Triple Threat, you know, providing, you know, basketball training and resource educational environment. And then we have political connections such as my good friend Isaiah Thomas and, you know, Kendra Brooks.
You know Isaiah Thomas.
Yeah, Sharif El-Mekki. I mean, not Sharif El-Mekki, Sharif Street. You know, so we have, you know, political connections in that space. So we're trying to, again, bring it in every aspect, whether socially, politically, educationally, academically, so that there's resources along the way as well that we can connect people to directly or indirectly, because it's like 6 degrees of separation. So we want to make sure we bridge that gap.
And that's important, because I was having a conversation with a prospective friend today, and we were talking about, you had a brief conversation there off camera about the drug money, everything that's coming down, and the people who are doing the work.
All right.
And they only half doing the work, because you're walking into this classroom or this organization, you're telling these kids about the evils of drugs, but you're not telling them how to get out. You're not giving them alternatives.
Yeah.
You're not giving them a skill other than to sell drugs.
Right.
And so is that you lecturing them on don't do this,
Right.
but then you leave them right there. And that seems to be, and I say this all the time, that seems to be the hole in so many of these programs, because you come in and you say, don't do drugs, but, you know, how can I get out my community? You know, what's my alternative to selling drugs? How can I, you know, because, and I'll say this real quick, when I was doing some work for RISE, the mayor's office, and I would sit down and talk to those guys, man, you know, those cats were making $3-4 grand a week.
Yeah.
Then they come out of jail, they make a minimum wage, man. And some pimply faced boy is telling them what to do, and I'm not being sarcastic, but you know, for a dude who's been paying bills, and that's hard to digest.
Right. Yeah.
That's hard to digest, man. And you know, and then the people depending on you telling you go back and sell, because you've been paying car payments, you've been paying rent, you've been paying bills. We do this, and that's what kids see. Kids see the guy who screwed up and now he's trying to do the right thing, and he's struggling.
Yeah. But you know, the thing with that, I'm sorry, go ahead, Dad.
I was just curious to know, like, are there any other, you know, resources or programs that you would like to, you know, bring forth to the front fold, or anything like that?
Incorporate with what you're doing right now.
Anything.
We got a guest. Justin's at the door, man.
Yeah. I can always, you know, off the top of the head, Deb, that's a great question, right? But off the top of the head, I don't know any dad to say yes, we'd like to bring them on board, but we're always using the show as a vehicle and a voice to say, hey, if you're out there doing this grassroots groundwork, we are eager and welcome to have you on board. So let me let the other
You
guests
ain't
speak.
shy, man. Don't even start that. He was sitting over there like he's shy.
He didn't want to show that he came in big. He was trying to stay
I
on
know I'm
camera.
going through at the same time, bro. I'm doing good,
I
man.
don't know. I was trying to figure who's out there. What's that bill collector out there?
Get on in.
Cut
So
you
yeah,
off.
so Dev, it's organizations who we realize are doing the work and want to be part of it and understand it with a true level of authenticity because, like Chris was saying, there's individuals and organizations who are doing work, but it's just really keyed towards the grant KPIs, right? And that's fine if you want to sustain a grant, but the catch-22 is that you will do the work to sustain a grant, but you'll lose the people in doing it because you won't make an impact. Now, the balance is that where do you find those people who's making an impact? That's those individuals who got their nails dirty, not the well-manicured hands, right? Grassroots work, right? So those are the ones who we're looking for as far as community voice to sustain us with the things that we're doing. We partner with them reciprocally to support them as well, because there's never been a guest on our show, and my wife Jackie can attest to this, who we have not reciprocated with and supported them in some kind of way, because we want it to be that Ubuntu, Kujichagulia, Susu type of aspect of community building. So any organization that's willing to partner with us, we're willing to open up and do that. But it's got to be with authenticity. We're not here to check off a box on your grant so that you can get another grant and leave the community decimated. We've seen that happen too many times. There's too many organizations in the tri-state area that do that, not to mention nationally. So.
But I think this goes back to our topic. The struggle is real, man.
Yeah.
There's folk who are struggling with depression. Poverty is really taking a grip on a lot of people, man. A lot of communities.
It is.
Politicians are not looking out for them.
Yeah.
People who they thought were going to look out for them. Divorce. Man, divorce is a big thing now because folk are finally trapped in a house for this long period of time.
Yeah.
Man, it's like, it's like one of them, I used to tell my wife, I'm going to sue you for false advertising. This ain't what I bought. I can say that now. This ain't what I'm paid for.
I mean, but like you said,
Don't be saying it at home. Just like, I'll use that.
I know better.
That's part of how we have to realize how are we going to navigate through this pandemic, right?
Yes.
Of course, the whole health aspect is, wear your mask, social distance, wash your hands, all yada, yada, yada. And you do all that, but yet and still, how do you navigate through the emotional, mental strain and trauma that's been put on ourselves, right? We have to first own that. Me and my wife, Jack, we talk about that quite a bit. Like, how do we make sure that, we don't lose each other in the midst of the challenge of trying to be virtual and trying to work from home and all that. So we've created a comfortable outlets for ourselves because, too much of me can be dangerous for Jackie. She might be like, look, I don't need this much of you. I love all of you, but I don't need this much of you today.
People laugh. The wisest thing I did was my wife's office at the top floor in the back and my office in the basement in the front. That's the wisest thing.
It's also in the basement.
Yeah, so it's sort of the same thing with me. I'm trying to let you get into it.
No.
Well, he gonna represent. He walked in right on time because I think, this sounds corny, but people are not laughing enough now. Life is so daunting and so tiresome for so many people, man, and they don't have much to laugh about. You saw some of the kids, man. And you talk to kids and they say, "Well, I'm in therapy," and I'm saying to myself, "Yeah, it ain't working." You need to do, because they're so intense at a young age, man. They so bombarded with the pressures of life already, man.
They carry an adult issues
they
and
are.
problems, and I think
but they don't laugh. I think that's part of it, though. You gotta laugh sometimes.
Yeah, true. But again,
go ahead,
I was gonna say the world has changed, man. Like when you go online, you can be introduced to a lot of different things. Some of that stuff don't make you laugh. Like I get caught up sometimes, like just needing to take a break, like because you're just seeing traumatic things after traumatic things, or some of it just silly or stupid too, and it's killing brain cells.
And this is what I tell people: you gotta turn that nonsense off, man. You cannot sit there and watch all these news shows, doom and despair, people dying, getting killed, and you flip it to the political stage, and don't think you're not gonna be depressed at the end of the day. And most of it is not real anyway. Everybody's making some just get you look at it. You got to turn it off.
But tied into what you said, just kind of with this whole, the struggle is real. People are
It
home. That's a whole new thing that they have to deal with now. Is just their devices and monitoring the time and what your kids are taking in, and so it's just.
All that's been accelerated because we've never got to a space where we had to actually monitor our social media to the level we're doing now, right? And the challenge came with because I do work with Mastery Charter School, right? And the challenge came for the students and the parents was that it's like you don't want them on the computer, but they got to use the computer to get to school.
Yes.
So you can't tell them, so how do you balance that with saying?
It's funny. Let me chime in too because I remember the difference between the generations. Like my father raised me to always have a watch on me, no matter what the situation. You gotta have a watch. And then cell phones came out. I was like, Dad, there's a clock right on his phone. And he I don't care. you need to have a watch on. I was like, that don't make no sense though. You understand that? And we was kind of like going back and forth. But of course, I did what he told me to do because I didn't want to get whooped. But as time went along, he now he don't need a watch. I mean, he still wears a watch. And some watches don't even work. I know you got the iPhone. I know that's
I got all kind of watches, man.
But I'm just speaking to the difference in the times now. Like,
But
so much has changed with these devices.
Culturally, yeah.
But here's the humor.
Devices.
I sit down with a parent. The parent says, "Well, I don't want my kid attending the virtual after school program, because it's just too much.
Yeah.
Well, what does he do?
Yeah.
He plays video games, and I'm looking at it like, really? So you would rather have him play, all these murderous video games than something constructive. So we do kind of pick and choose when it comes to what we think is viable. But I also want to get back to. We talking about the struggle is real. How do we get people to recognize it's real? Because we talked about off camera. Black folk don't go to therapy.
Right.
It's a bad word when you say therapy, you say counseling. They just don't. I mean, I know some folk who they know they screwed up, but they're not going to go to therapy.
Yeah.
And they're not, and they won't even tell their boy. That's my man. It's just this pride thing. So and it's a collective thing, man. How do we get people to start, because if you don't admit it, you can't do it.
The elders got to go first. That's what helped me.
I actually want to back up on that. I actually want to back up on that real quick. I know you mentioned therapy and everything. Why do you think that is that, it has that negative, connotation, especially in our community?
Because I can tell you, when I was growing up, therapy meant you was crazy.
They thought you were crazy.
You may never heard this term, but they put you on a short bus.
Yeah.
That too.
That little small yellow school
Short
bus.
bus thing,
You ain't giving, like me, I'm walking before I
Short
get on
bus
that
was a
school.
different type of crazy. Like therapy's like I'm gonna go to school. It's crazy.
No, but it's that negative.
All the same bus.
But it's that negative, stigma that came with it, and you tease people, like, if somebody went to the counselor in school, they got teased.
Yeah.
If folk found out you were seeing the counselor on a regular basis, you got teased.
Yeah.
Heck, if you went to speech therapist, I don't care how bad you talked, they found out you was going to speech therapist.
Yeah.
So it just carried on, and what happens is stuff like that becomes generational.
Right.
All of a sudden the value disappears because everybody's focusing on the teasing part. I don't want to be teased.
Yeah.
I mean, not even that part too. I feel like there is kind of a stigma of almost like some weakness type thing. Like, you need to go talk to somebody. Like, I can't believe, like, yo, toughen up. Just hold on to that, take that in.
It's
Like,
big boy pants.
yeah, pretty much. Like, so that is another big thing. I feel like, as Black people, we kind of already expect things to be hard sometimes, and it's just like keep moving forward. So I think that's almost sometimes a reason why it's like, I'm not gonna go complain or talk to somebody or feel like I'm complaining. And it does, not to me, I don't feel like that, but that stigma is out there that you kind of, you feel weak for that.
But you'd be surprised how many people went through something similar who never said a word until you say it. And then all of a sudden, oh man, Justin, that same thing happened to me. There are so many people who we wear masks.
Yeah.
People wear masks every day. It's Halloween every day because I put this mask. We put this mask on, and I'm, even in church. How you doing? Blessed by the best. Everything is falling apart. Yes, you do. Everything is falling apart. The home, the dog done bit the cat done bit the bird. You got holes in your shoes. You despair got a hole in it.
Right.
But you just what we say, and we're like that. Even when you or the other side of the coin is, folk don't really mean it when they ask you how you doing because they do it at a fast pace. Hey, what's going on? How you doing? They still moving. They don't even, And when you start talking, it's like, man, you got me.
What's funny too? So when I first got into sales, right, and I had to speak to a high volume of people. So my pitch was like, hey, this is Justin from whatever company, calling because of this. How you doing today? And my manager was like, don't ask them how they doing today. I was like, well, why not? And she was like, because if they're doing bad, then you're going to have to listen to that. I was like, yeah, but if they're doing bad, shouldn't I know that and address it and then we get to business? Like, but she didn't see it that way.
Right.
But that's how I saw it.
Yeah.
And that's why I sold accounts that they couldn't sell in there.
But he talked about it. You made it personal.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing we were talking about. People who get these grants of service, people, especially people who look like us. It's just a program to them. So I don't, all I got to do. I say this all the time when I do my trainings. If you talk to a room with 50 people, and you get through your curriculum, and 49 don't have a clue what you talked about, you're not successful. You think you're successful because you finished. I was in San Antonio at a workshop. And dude was talking about how he went through all these curriculums he was doing. So I'm like, wait a minute, I raised man, I work with the same population. There's no way.
Yeah.
Because they read at different levels, you know, some of them, they don't pay, this is before ADD was a thing, they only pay attention, man, you know, they want to fight and everything, so, yeah, but we can, no, but who did you reach?
Yeah.
You know, who actually got what you received, and that's the problem. See, you're smart, you figured it out. If I can build a relationship, you saw me with some of the kids that can.
Yeah.
People buy you, they don't buy this.
Yeah, exactly. It's that relationship value that always comes back. And I'm glad you pointed that out because sometimes we don't recognize the humanity in others. That's one of the things that I often do all the time. A good friend of mine is Dr. Truman Hudson up in Detroit. He's a social impact strategist, and I learned a lot from him. And one of the things he taught me was to connect with people, right? And ever since I've been working with Dr. Truman, it's been many years now, and he always made me aware, just talk to people. So now when I go to like shopping stores, whatever, I say, hey, how you doing? How's your day going? Because I want to connect and humanize that. And if I'm out for a run and I'm jogging, I always look at people and wave because I want to connect to that humanizing part. But you'll find, just like you said, that your manager, people don't realize the importance of that. Like, why you want somebody like, I asked him, how you doing? It's like, well, I'm doing bad. I can't complain. Even if I did, nobody would listen. I said, I would listen, but I probably can't help, but I would at least listen. And they don't realize the fact that, damn, somebody does care, right? Take the time to do that. And my brother, Dr. James Jones, he has a book called I'm All Right. And the book talks about how to overcome generational trauma and things of that nature. But he named it I'm All Right because that's a reflex response.
Yeah, man.
If somebody's coming up to you, how you doing, Chris? I'm all right. But really, you're not. You're burdened with so much, just like it was just part of this conversation. We see you're burdened with so much, but you don't want to really let that out. You want to wear that mask. I'm all right. Let it keep going, and people will accept that, right? And that's fine because you can't challenge anybody if they say they are right. But the truth is generational trauma that's been built into us, and part of that stigmatization is because. Going back to, if you want to go back to slavery, Willie Lynch and all that, there's trauma with the black man. You can't admit that you're hurt because you have to be the protector and provider of your home. So if you say you got to go to trauma, then that's less of being a man. Now to the black woman, she's never really respected and valued, as Malcolm X says, so she can't admit to being needing help because then she's still seen as weak and vulnerable. So now as a black cultural society, when you talk therapy, it's hard for us to step into it because the black man thinks I'm going to be less than, and the black woman thinks she's going to be vulnerable. So we have to really look at how do we, as we're talking about, how do we step into that space? And it's all about openness and communication and sincerity and recognizing humanity of others so that we can say, hey, Chris, how you doing? Whenever I talk to your pops and he asks me how I'm doing, we always tell you, man, I'm not having a good day. It's just not a good day. Sometimes we text each other, I ain't doing good. And that's fine, right? Because at least he know when I'm talking to him, when we talk to each other, we're real about it, right? And we have to just have those more authentic and original conversations so people can know that, hey, it's okay to not have a good day.
Well, coming soon, we're going to have a round table. And what the round table is, I'm going to get a bunch of brothers together, we're going to sit around the table. And we have various topics we can talk about, and this is gonna be one of them. We gotta adjust in there because we gotta laugh.
I got pain too. So you can bring your feelings. Don't bring your feelings. We gonna laugh. We gonna look at you.
Nah, but it's real because you know, and I go back as generational. You know, there's guys I've known for years. You know, and I know they're doing bad because when you know somebody from back in the hood, people tell you. Whenever you, oh man, so and so's not, you know, and you see him, oh man, you know, I'm on fire. What? I don't say it, but I'm saying to myself like, yo, I know because you know, and we forget how small the community was growing up in the hood, man. That just because you move out, folks still know what's going on. You know, and you know, we got folk dying of prostate cancer because they won't say anything, and you know. We got folk diabetes, you know, heart attacks, or marriages just breaking up when they could be saved because I'm not going to tell anybody because I'm this macho person.
And all that trauma, it impacts you physically as well. You know, of course, it's the mental aspect, but like you're saying, look at some of the brothers, like all of us right now, great physical condition because we're allowing ourselves to be open and mental and wellness in that space. But you look at some brothers and even some sisters who are not allowing themselves to be whole health mentally. You look at them, it eats you up, it denigrates your body.
But it goes back to, and I'm going to put this at men because Justin had an excellent point with his dad, because my dad was the same way. But we got to break the cycle. We got to pass that stuff on, man. You know, I remember, look, man, I broke my thumb, you know, and the bone was kind of sticking on the side. My dad was like, don't cry. Don't cry. You know, I'm saying I'm about to die here, bone sticking out and everything. But that was just, you know, how he was. You know, he's a big dude. He was just that kind of person, you know. And I think that's the thing that we've passed down from generation to generation. That is a weakness if you show your emotions. You know,
I want to just try a story that makes sense with it. It's crazy too. I've been hanging out with this this new group of people. They cool people. It's actually Chris actually got one of these brothers in to play college basketball. So because of Chris' connection, we made a connection, and these brothers like they not scared to talk about mental health. It's like it's crazy. It's not like you run into somebody like that every day, but we did. He's happy to be from West Philly. He's talking about how him and his friends when he was younger, he used to be bad, getting into stuff. They was just in a bad environment. And one of the boys got shot a couple times. Came in the house, in his foot too. He came in the house in pain, like Robin in pain. Like, his homie was like, look at him, he crying. Like,
that's crazy.
And that's the extent of it. Like, your homie got shot, and you making fun of him. Yeah. Because that's the thing. Look at him. He over there drawing. Look at him. Just give him a tampon. Like, what? He's about to die. He's bleeding out. But that's how we really look at it. But and the second point is, sometimes people don't tell others what they're going through because of the responses.
Yeah, that's one thing that I was thinking about.
The responses are
some people aren't necessarily that genuine when you tell them how you doing. They're like, ooh, like that's tea. Like they taking it to somebody else or they judging. Yeah. So it's just you kind of almost gotta be mindful of that sometimes too. Who you talking to.
Well, not even the tea. Somebody just saying something that's just not helpful
or hating. It's just like different. It's a whole bunch of
we
different
talked
things,
about it a couple of weeks
scenarios.
ago. You gotta have like I said, I do this workshop and it's called Life is a 12-round bout. And I always talk about round 2. Round 1, you get out there, everybody's dancing and everything. Round 2 is when you start to get hit. And the question is, who's in your corner? Because if you go back to your corner and man, Justin, he rocked you, man. I don't know how you stood up and you took that. Or the guy's going to be like, yo, Justin, this is what we got to do. And we got the wrong folk in our corner, but you got to know how to identify it. And that's part of our struggle I was going to talk about later, but since we get in there, who you surrounding yourself with, man. Who's in your corner? Yeah. Because that can help you or that can hurt you. If you got folk that's shaming you because you need help, then you're not going to say anything. And you call a post office somewhere, you do something crazy, and oh man, I knew he was going to do it. Or you got folks that's going to allow you to be yourself. I think most of us don't have those people around.
Or it's some people that's really, really high functioning. I'll take Anthony Bourdain. Remember who that? Yeah. Person known. He had everything you could ever want out. Career. But I'm sure every time he tried to talk about something, it was like, hey, Anthony Bourdain, what you complain about? What you complain about, bro? But he never got the help that he needed to not make that fatal decision.
Because that's why you got who you surround yourself with. You got to surround yourself with somebody that's going to allow you to be who you are. That's not going to sit there and be who I think you should be. That's one thing I told you all the time, man. Folk will always try to define you. But you got to know who you are and be strong enough in who you are to know when I need to talk to Jeff about this. Or I got friends who I don't see regularly. Tommy, I have known Tommy since first grade. We've been best friends, man. When we talk. But I know if I got an issue, I can call him up. If you got an issue, you can call me up. I got people like that. You got to have folk. I don't see Jeff on a regular basis. But Jeff, I got this program and you to come in. You got to surround yourself with folk like that. And a lot of times we don't. We get people around us who like us for what we can do for them, or because how we make them feel. But that's all temporary. You, the person that's going to be there when you don't have jokes anymore, man. You really got to sit down and you got to go through stuff. I know when I'm a cancer survivor. Everybody knows when I got prostate cancer. And I joke about it now, but let me tell you, some black folk are just dumb. The stuff they say to you, man. We didn't tell a lot of people, so my wife decided, long story short, it was like, okay, guys, like, you need to share this because you can help some people. Man, I remember somebody telling me, man, my boy had prostate cancer. They cut him open, they just closed him back up. How you know, fool? You weren't even in there. How you know that, oh man, you're never going to be right. This stuff people supposed to be, supposed to be helping. Just walk.
It's like they were saying.
We really don't know. I ruptured my Achilles, right? And one of my friends, the same week that I posted, he put this post on my wall, somebody breaking his ankle. Like, this supposed to make me feel better? Why do I want to see this? And I didn't know until a couple of weeks later. He was like, yeah, it's like, he's a comedian too. I didn't know if you think that was, I was like, well, I didn't, but like,
I get it now.
You don't know what, people got funny ways of trying to like cheer you up.
But that's why you gotta know though you gotta know who you can talk to. You can talk to about what. It's like and I go on my 2-minute Steve Harvey rant. Yo, dude is writing about. He's a comedian and he's giving people relationship advice, and he hasn't had a successful relationship, but he sells books. So what he has charisma.
Write me a bunch of books. I promise.
But he has charisma. He has charisma, and people are attracted to the star power. But that's his reality, bro.
I don't want to get off topic on that, but that's part and parcel of the problem, though.
And I agree. That's what I'm saying. That's the issue.
You have individuals like
Yeah.
that, and there's a lot of them who are influencers, but
Yep.
they're really infectious in our community.
Yeah.
Because now they got gazillion million followers,
Yep.
and whatever they say kind of goes. But if one of us say who only got 800
Yeah.
followers,
Yeah.
ain't nobody gonna listen to none of y'all. But those infectious influencers are really damaging our community.
Yeah.
They have no credence into the ground level work, the mentality, the social wellness of our people, but yet they're out there spewing this garbage that their people are eating it up because they're seeing either the money they made, the influence they got, the houses and cars,
Yeah.
and they're saying this must be it.
Yeah.
We're so indoctrinized into the capitalistic system of our society that whatever happens on social media we perceive as being real, so we chase that, and we have such aspirations, we collectively, not generally, there's so much aspirations for what they have. If we try and challenge that, we become the haters. We
Yeah.
become the people that they cancel. Again, shout out to my lovely wife, Jack. We be challenging these folk every week, and we get scores of emails, but we're speaking truth to power, and we're calling it out because
Yeah.
we can't have these infectious people who are quote-unquote influencers trying to change the mindset of our youth because, we have to develop that tribe, right?
Yeah.
And we talk about that is that the circle of friends that we have, if your circle of friends aren't moving you towards being a better person, you don't have a circle, you have a cage. And they're just caging you in, right?
Right.
They're not allowing you to be who you need to be. And of course we have to do that in a safe way, right? But if we know these individuals who are with us going to support us, then we have to use that as our leverage point to help develop our wellness in that space as well.
I liken it to successful athletes.
Mm-hmm.
I never forget when I went to college. And my book, my shameless plug for my book, Community Ball. Gotta get that plug, man. But but the book came. I get to the stone. You want to talk about the stone? No, I got a story. I got a story. Don't get me started. But no, I never forget. We were playing the first game of the season, man. I played baseball and basketball. I had a partial scholarship. For baseball, I had scholarship baseball, and I was trying to get some extra money. Because you couldn't work back then.
Right.
They
Different now.
You still don't work to get paid.
Making that money.
Just get paid.
But I never forget, and all these guys on 4 rocks, look around the huddle, man, we be down 1 point, like 10 seconds to go in the game, and the coach is like, gee, drawing up play. So, dude, look in the stands. Man, there's a lot of people in here. Yeah, man, man, we can't lose this game. Everybody, all the rest of the team, like, yo, yeah. I'm like, yo, and the coach trying to draw up a play for him. So first of all, like, dude, you ain't even paying attention.
Mm-hmm.
So I know what's gonna happen when the ball kicks. So the coach is like, well, who wants the ball? I'm like, yo, give me the ball. And I was a freshman. And after the game, he was like, I missed a shot. I tell everybody when they'll get to the book. But after the game, he was like, well, why did you do it? I grew up in the hood.
Mm-hmm.
I played on playgrounds, man. They threw stuff at you if you. They wasn't gonna throw them at me there.
Mm-hmm.
I played down, some of them rec centers in the hood, man, where they could stick their foot out and trip you on the sideline. You gotta run down with 1 hour. You played in some of the same places, so it was different. Just like you guys.
Mm-hmm.
You guys played in those crowds in high school. So when you got to college, I remember y'all went down to play. What was it? Play Bowie.
Yeah.
And half the team was petrified. They looking at, shout out to Boyd. It's not a bad thing. But I told my wife I knew I was in trouble when he had the movie rope around around the course, around the mile of the court. She said, "What you mean?" I said, "Yo, when they got their rope, that means it's fans." But I remember the faces on the rest of the team. And I remember talking to the coach after the game, and they played there before. They played in bigger crowds than that, man. They played in playground, and this is my thing. That's what's wrong with Ben Simmons. He's an AAU kid. He hasn't played in the hood where they shout and scream. Y'all played in gyms where people didn't like y'all. And I think it's the same thing in life. You don't go through these things, and then we people get in these positions and they don't know how to respond. But there's no, unless you're passing it on, there's no way. Like when they wanted to play ball, they tell you, I took them down North Philly. Y'all want to play basketball? Where did y'all go? 27 Clearfield.
27 Clearfield.
Yeah, y'all want to go? Y'all can go where I play there.
Oh, no wonder y'all so good.
Because I came out here and they picking people up. Yo, what you doing, man?
I still do that.
Yeah, they picking people up. No, that's after the game. I have friends. We knock the crap out of each other. When the game is over here, but during the game, I'm stepping over you. I'm like, hey, But I think that's how we kind of moved to a society that we got a group of folk who just underprepared or not prepared because we have the wrong people running programs in our communities.
And that's part of what happens, though, Chris. Now our society is codified into this space of comfort, right? So now the pandemic comes, and that codification can't really help you because now
Jeff gonna make me go to my next vocabulary.
I mean-
I'm trying to keep this simple. He just, he throwing all these words out like,
That means we
I'm like, all right, you know, I'm like, I'm trying to keep it simple for the audience, but I'm like, he just throwing these words.
Dumb it down, boy.
What's that show? Just give on Emancipation Proclamation.
Nah, but you guys, who are these frauds that's poisoning the community? We gotta talk about
It's
it.
a lot of them out
Because
there.
because like Steve Harvey, because we started off Steve Harvey, right?
Well, let me give you my disclaimer. When I had my first show called Accentuate the Positive, I used to get during the show and after the show, I got so many frustrated text messages, emails because I would say stuff like that that people weren't, crazy with. Like I remember talking about TD Jakes.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, we got to like
So,
because
all right. Well,
because we
I
talk
don't
about-
get
It's
too
like
deep,
you
but-
talk about who you want
Go ahead,
around
go ahead.
you. That
because
doesn't matter.
I was just gonna say about Steve Harvey, like I've heard some of his messages. I haven't read the how to be like I don't need to read it. Like I don't need that. But I know he does push a lot of positive messages
he
too.
does. Sure.
So, but obviously, when you talk about relationships, is a man with several failed relationships the one to go to? I'm not saying that he's not. He could. I'm just saying,
Well, my
like,
thing about Steve is
because I think about the rap industry as, and I am, you talking about a fan, like Jada Kiss, the Locks, the Versus, like I was on that. I ain't watch it, but that's what I grew up on. But that also, I would be aloof if I didn't realize what that did to my mind and the people who listen to it mind.
But my thing with Steve Harvey is he postures himself as an individual who speaks for all men, and you don't. He puts himself in a position like he knows what every man is, and the problem with it is, women believe that.
But as a speaker,
So when
can't
I
you see the confidence that you need to have? Like the I am the man. Like,
Yeah, but I'm not going to say I
Yeah.
speak for all men. I'm not going to get up there and say every man does this. This is what you need to know about men, because it's not true. It's not accurate.
He has a target audience. He's speaking
I'm
to
not denying
women.
it.
It's not necessarily for men.
But he's
You know what I
but
mean?
he's
That's
poisoning
another
no, but he's
topic,
poisoning
you know?
relationships.
Sure.
So this woman is listening to that thinking every man in this room is the same.
And I think kind of what you said about
Yeah.
having appropriate people around you. We talked about social media. It's also kind of what you're taking in. Like, granted, he's putting out all these positive messages. It isn't necessarily the truth or something that's going to help these women in this case is like be better or find what it is that they're necessarily looking for. So I do kind of, I just wanted to kind of bring that back.
And I'm not bashing them. I'm just saying that when you're in a position like that, there's responsibility that comes with it, and you have to be careful how you forward your messages. You can't get up there and say, to a woman that this is what every man thinks, because you don't know what every man thinks.
Yeah.
Every man thinks totally different. We. Those of us who are married, we love our wives, but there's some differences in how we do it. So therefore, I couldn't get up there and say, well, my way is the right way, and everybody else is doing it wrong. And I think that's what we
But
get.
what if saying in one way got you an extra $100 million? In the other
See, I disagree. I think if you did it the right way, you can still get $100 million.
You think so?
Because of who he is. Because of who he is. No, I mean because of who he is. I think because of who he is. If you have the name and the clout, you can. I look at AI since I love the basketball analogies. People say the same thing about him. Because he came in a time where everybody else was wearing suits and nobody was defying the NBA and everybody was the fresh haircuts and I remember when he first started, they were calling him a thug and everything, and he just let me be me. Look what happened. He changed the code. You don't see a dude without a tattoo now. So sometimes, if you do it the right way and stick to it and you're successful, that's all people look at. And he has a name. When you have a name and a brand, that's what people look at. And I don't think you have to kowtow, like Steve Harvey, he took a big hit when he went to the Trump thing, because he thought he was bringing you up. He went and visited Trump, and he's speaking for all black people. You don't speak for all black people.
So if you could choose your boys to be like one player, would you have it be like Grant Hill or Allen Iverson?
I gotta say, talent-wise, see, I like Grant Hill. I like Grant Hill.
I'm
But
talking
let me ask
about
you a question.
everything they embody, because they
but-
both got extraordinary talent,
Yeah,
right?
but who you gonna remember 20 years? Most kids,
AI, for sure.
Most kids
Without
today
a
won't even know who Grant who.
But-
They don't know Grant Hill was a great player.
And adding to that, though, that's a
Good
great
question, though.
Yeah, that's a very good question. But I think for those two, it's no loss in that. It's no laws.
I don't think it is. I think it's
So,
both being authentic.
Yeah, so you know, it would have been different if you said who you want your kid to be, Russell Westbrook or Allen Iverson, something like that.
Or Ron Artest.
Yeah, Ron Artest with someone where there's some difference. But with Grant Hill and AI, it's stylistic.
Yeah.
You know, like I would say, it doesn't matter, right? I have a son. I only have one. But if you say who you want your son to be, Allen Iverson or Grant Hill, it doesn't matter because you can accept the quote unquote elegance and grace of which Grant Hill had, and his career is really derailed by his injuries.
For sure.
Who
for
knows?
sure.
He
Yeah.
might have been, you know, one of
He
the
was
top
the next
50 as
MJ. I
well,
think he
right?
was-
Because he was putting
He
in
was.
work.
Mhm.
Just check him out on YouTube. And so AI had a lengthy career. He proved his worth throughout the length of his career. But again, I get your question, just like, you know, which one would you choose? And for me, it's just like,
But it's
those
differences
two.
because
It's
you look
differences,
at, and this
yeah.
goes back to we talking about that the struggle is real
Mhm.
because a lot of us, there's a lot of people who like AI face that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, do I choose being me or do I sell out?
Mm-hmm.
And sell is a strong word. Do I choose being me or do I choose being the company man? And there's a lot of people who face that issue, man. And some people struggle under the weight of all that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I love Muhammad Ali, and I hear people. I don't know many people who could go through what he went through.
Yeah.
You know, and people talk all this smack. You know, first of all, you give up. You know you're the baddest dude in the world,
Yeah,
and you
yeah.
give it up in your prime for what you believe, regardless of what you want to say about it, for what you believe.
Mm-hmm.
And you know he was getting death threats and all this stuff. Dude was out there still in the
Yeah,
middle
still
ring, floating like a
hard
butterfly. I
talking,
mean,
yeah.
he just had this, and I think people don't recognize that part about him. Like even I'm a Malcolm X fan. I know as a Christian, people get upset when I say that, but I don't know many folk who want to die for what they believe.
Mm-hmm.
And who are constantly seeking the truth. And I think that's the difference, man. When you pursue excellence and mediocrity, excellence means I'm going to defy the odds.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
You know, that means I'm going to do something like, you know, I'm sure when you said you wanted to be a comedian, everybody went, oh yeah, that's a good career move. Nah, something inside you,
Yeah,
what
no,
you know.
I didn't care what anybody said.
Yeah, but see, and that's what, you got to have that dog, man. I think that's the thing that Allen Iverson had. You know, he wasn't trying to change the culture. He wasn't trying to change the landscape. But, you know, I'm this dude from Newport News. That's all, you know, that's all I am.
Challenge that though, but dragging it back to the struggle is real. AI was being who he is, and you asked him if we could ask him, he said, "I'm just being who I am." We have youth today who are saying that to their demise, though.
Yeah.
You know, it's just like I'm just being who I am,
Yeah.
as if they can't change to be better. Do we think, as an open conversation question, do we think it's because society has morphed into a different traumatized space? Whereas being who you are is not as beneficial as when AI was saying being who he is.
Let me piggyback on your point.
Mm-hmm.
AI talking about this is who I am, right?
Mhm.
And we talk about Grant Hill versus her career. So AI had probably had a higher peak, but I think Grant Hill actually had more sustained success as a player,
Yeah.
from start to finish, because he played up until he was old. Like AI couldn't play in the league
In
after,
college, yeah, he did.
and I think because he didn't change who he was,
Mhm.
he wasn't willing to accept a third, fourth, fifth
Yeah.
position. Whereas Grant Hill was willing to
Yeah.
gracefully
Really?
go into another position.
Yeah.
So was it to AI's demise that he did not, just like you're talking about the youth,
Yeah.
As he got older.
was it to his
Yeah.
demise that he didn't change his mindset?
But I think is in my difference in that
It's
it was
still
his demise.
right,
But to me, the difference is Allen Iverson knew he had a gift,
Mm-hmm.
and he knew that gift. And we had this conversation before about that gift was opening doors for him.
Mhm.
So that's what he was referring to. I'm not going to, because he knew that gift was that was his thing. That was his passion. That's what he lived for.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the difference is, you know, if you beating your wife and stealing and cheating, it's a difference.
Yeah.
To me, it's a cop out to say I'm not going to change who I am. That's
Right.
not honing the gift. That's not doing adding anything. That's just you being stuck in your role. But I do hear that a lot. You know, I work with kids.
Yeah,
I hear from
yeah.
adults. I run fatherhood groups. I hear from I've been successful. Well, define successful. You know, because from where I'm sitting at,
That's the thing.
you know, my lens is a little different.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the thing. How do we define success for our community, right? The struggle is real, so how do we define the success of saying we've got to move our communities to a better place? You know, we've seen much too many neighborhoods being gentrified and people being displaced. Now with the rent moratorium being lifted, we're seeing evictions happening. So now that jobs are being taken away through technology, which is not a bad thing, but yet still technology is taking away jobs. We're seeing economic opportunities taken away. And the workforce is now there's no career development. There's jobs being created, but not careers. So we see all this tragic transitioning taking place. And we're still in the midst of the pandemic.
Yeah.
We some places going back to wearing masks. You got to prove you're vaccinated. You got to get vaccinated. So that struggle is real. So how do we get our communities moved back to a place of understanding that, you know, we have to get to a place of wellness mentally and socially so that we can get to a place of wellness economically and you know, in our educational spaces. I see it, you know, much too much in our communities, man. And some of the guests that we have on our show, Community Voice, they talk about how, you know, these communities are destitute, and you know, it's kind of like ubiquitous for the crimes that are being happening in our community. So we got to get away from that.
Well, I think it's a couple things. First, I'll start with, and I think my generation had a lot to do with it, because we were the generation. I'll be 60 in November. We were that generation where we got to get out. We gotta get out. We gotta get out. We gotta get out. We gotta get out. That's all we heard. Yup, gotta get out. You know, there was no you gotta get out and come back. You know, there was no you gotta give back to your community. There was no. So what happened was the folks that got left behind couldn't afford to go.
Right.
You know,
right.
And then you had the folk who were doing all the damage anyway. So they just kind of took over.
Yeah.
And I think people my generation, a lot of them still don't go back and do stuff. I have friends, but I know a lot who don't. So I think that was the start. I think the other part of it is, you know, you start one person at a time. You know, when we were talking about changing the world for Justin come in. That's why I do what I do. I never walk into a classroom or to a group thinking everybody in that group gonna leave here with the same vision. If I can get one or two people, you know, now it becomes generational.
Yeah.
Because Justin's gonna teach his kids. You know, I'm blessed to be sitting in this room, but I've known Justin since what, middle school, high school, you know.
Yeah, I started cooking him in middle school.
Yeah, you're tripping.
He always brings that up. He brings it up every time.
So middle school.
You know, and I've watched him become who he is. You know, I got my sons here, man. So you know, we ran the basketball.
Right.
You know, so but that's what you got to do. You got to plant seeds where you can.
Yeah.
I think the problem with most people is they want to come back and change the hood at one time, and it's not going to happen.
But you plant, we need waterers, man.
You do.
We need waterers.
Well, but you get waters out of this group because if I plant,
No, I'm agreeing.
They're
I'm
doing
agreeing.
it. They're
Yeah.
doing it. This is their show. I didn't.
Right.
They came up with this concept.
And I again try to bring you on just to discuss like the resources that are out there for people, because I feel like that's a major issue in our community. Some of us know what the issues are, but not a lot of people know the resources or the opportunities that are out there that can either, you know, help us all or help and uplift the community.
Yeah, on Facebook, you missed the whole discussion about unnecessary procedures.
Unnecessary growth.
Who talking about?
Yo, doc. But no, but that's a good point. But let's get back to trauma. One of the things that I discovered, and I think the definition of trauma is what messes up a lot of people. Because we always think trauma is this physical, you know, has to be some physical act that causes trauma. So a lot of our kids go untreated for stuff they saw.
Yeah.
You know, they saw somebody get shot. They saw their mom or dad getting beat or brutalized. You know, this COVID thing where family members weren't waking up. You know, now all of a sudden, I don't understand quarantine, and now I can't go anywhere, do anything because somebody in my house had it.
Yeah.
So I think those are the things that should be included in trauma that's not. And a lot of our kids struggle with that. So let's talk about the youth part since we segued into that.
Yeah.
And I want to hear from you guys because you guys can talk about the differences when you were growing up. You know, we have a lot of youth who struggle with trauma. Yet we have few programs who deal with that. You know, we just not jokingly, but just, you know, in a kind of critical way, drugs is the answer. But we know drugs don't cure trauma. It's like, if I take a drug in the street, it alleviates whatever I'm going through temporarily. But when that drug wears off, I'm right back at that place. So let's talk about that part of trauma, because that struggle is real for it. And you said it. We have kids who are dealing with adult issues now. You know, they dealing with adult issues now. So let's talk about that, man. So I don't know who wants to go first. Just I want to hear your thoughts on that. You know, one, you know, do you agree? Do you disagree? You know, two, you know, what are some of the things that we can do? We got parents listening, you know, that we can give parents, man, you know, or guardians or people who disciple, mentors, whatever. You know, what are some of the tools we can give them a tool belt to help deal with those kids who are struggling with trauma?
I mean, kind of tied into just what Jeff does in general. I think we need to have more resources for parents, because, you know, like working with kids in school, like they come to school, they have these issues. But then like they're spending time at home, and half the time you don't know what's going on. You know, sometimes their parents are carrying things that they may have had at their childhood, you know, so it's just like carrying on. It's a cycle, and you see some of those things happening with those kids. So I mean, sometimes it starts at the root. Like you got to start with maybe having resources and opportunities for parents to start better supporting their kids. But then also we do need to just have resources and things there for kids, like safe spaces where they can go and just kind of talk and be open. You know, whether that's counseling. I know with my sports program, I mean, I work with all types of kids. Not every kid I'm working with is going to the NBA. Like, it's sometimes the worst kid I've ever seen picking up a basketball. But it's more so about, you know, just having that fellowship, a mentor, being able to talk to him, and again, an opportunity for him to have a safe space and just talk to somebody without any type of judgment. So
Well, I gotta say that you're getting older because you used to get on me when I used to tell kids that. You're not going to the NBA. He used to tell me I was cool. I said, yo,
because it's like, yo, y'all not better than me. So.
That's what you start realizing. That's what you realize.
That's what I was saying. Like, yo, I'm at this age and you can't beat me, dude. You're not going anywhere. He used to say I was smart. Like, I would tell him, mom coming in, yo, don't leave that poor kid back. Because the only he gonna get out is to be stupid. Seriously, you leaving him back because you think he's gonna play basketball somewhere. Dude, you know, you're a dime a dozen at that size. And he used to tell me, oh, you just...
Because part of me knew I could take that as a kid growing up. I mean,
that was
a challenge. But I know kind of with working with some of these kids, man, it's just like they almost kind of coddled in a way sometimes. And
that's AAU basketball.
So do you think that's part of the reason why some of these kids have trauma? Because, you know, they're easily traumatized. Is that it?
Well, I think that's part and parcel of the situation, but also we have to look at how trauma is. There's hard trauma, then there's soft trauma. Yeah. And the hard trauma, of course, is the overt trauma that we see in the communities, the gun and violence and so forth and so on. But the soft trauma is like, it's behavioral, it's psychological, it's what the kid or the individual has assumed themselves, and you can't really see that. You can't. If I'm walking up to you, you can't see any of the soft trauma that I have in me. So we have to really have organizations, and I'm gonna give a shout out to Dr. Jackie Johnson, who has Sankofa Healing Studios, and she does free counseling. So if any of your listeners or supporters are out there, go check out Dr. Jackie Johnson, Sankofa Healing Studios. She gives free therapy for the community.
Is it like for adults?
Adults and children. That's what I was about to allude to. She does play therapy as well. So therefore, she takes the aspect of play for adults and children. They have them open up and understand how to release some of that soft trauma that's in them. Because again, the hard trauma we can see based on their environment. We can't see the soft trauma, but it comes out through play. So Dr. Jackie Johnson, Sankofa Healing Studios, check her out. She's got a great program and she offers free therapy sessions. I believe it's maybe only 1 or 2, so don't go there for your whole therapy.
Can I book the next 5 months?
Yeah, but again, she's doing a great job in having understand that there's those layers and levels of trauma that we have to get to in our communities, because again, it happens in so many different various capacities.
I just feel like starting and having a place to go, even if it's just 2 sessions, like that is important.
Yeah.
But let me say this. Let me back up a little bit. How do we get them to understand that's an okay step to take? Because the issue is, even with resources, how do you get a community who have issues with just the stigma to say it's okay to do that? It's okay to take
freely, openly talking about it like this, I think, more often.
Yeah, definitely. Go ahead,
like you said, I just think, you know, someone has to, you know, take that jump, you know, lead by example. You know, I hear, you know, a bunch of people talking about, I think it is good that I'm hearing it more and more in the community about therapy, but at this point, you know, I just hear a lot of people talking. I just think at this point we should have to take ownership of that situation and actually physically go to therapy. And once you do that, I think you'll start seeing more and more people saying, well, if this person is going, you know, they actually don't think it's so bad, maybe I should give it a try.
Or offering options, kind of like you did, giving people a place to go is another thing. I think sometimes when you think about going to therapy, it's like scary. Like, who I'm just about to start picking this random person to just start going to. Like, you know, I feel like I kind of trust you. I know you. So it's just like, oh, he's giving up somebody that may be a reliable person. So that's another way to kind of start to, I feel like, kind of change that stigma and make it more appropriate. How do you deal with that?
So, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, one of the things that we can do to approach that is to, what I do now, certify mindfulness. And what mindfulness does, it gets them to an understanding of how to deal with their self and their emotions. And when you begin to understand how to deal with yourself and your emotions, that gets you to a place of understanding your level of wellness and where you can improve at. Just like I did the last week with the youth at Molina, I was just telling them about, you know, understanding and be aware of yourself so that you can be better. So the more you become aware of yourself, the more you can become aware of how you can improve. So that's where the therapy comes in. Because if I know, like, well, this is how I'm feeling and I can relate to it and I'm aware of myself in this capacity, then when someone says, oh, you can go to therapy and get better, then the thought is getting better, then the thought is, okay, step into therapy is a helpful way for for my wellness to getting better. So that level of mindfulness, I think, is a helpful transition, because mindfulness is, and I'll say this in a way that hopefully it's understood, it's non-threatening, right?
Mm-hmm.
If I'm talking about mindfulness, sometimes people talk about, they think it's yoga, things that's meditation. It encompasses that, but it also encompasses an easier transition for you to understand how to step into therapy as well. So I've known a lot of people to go from my mindfulness sessions to Dr. Jackie Johnson and other various therapists, because now they understand the level of wellness that they have to achieve and step into.
Real quick, if you don't mind me asking, like, can you kind of dive a little deeper in, like, to that whole mindfulness thing? Just because I remember I actually took a course in mindfulness, like, in college, and
That's what I paid for, man.
Doing coke yoga.
Let's talk about it now. That's good.
Get no refund now.
But it's funny because in that class, we actually did do some, of the meditation and everything like that. But obviously, you said it's more than that, so I kind of just want to know. I want to find out more. Like, can you just dive deeper into that whole mindfulness field?
Yeah.
Well, before you dive, I want you, because I do want you to dive, but I want you to kind of include this in there, because the perfect example was that there were students who I knew needed to be in your class who got turned off. You know, because of the preconception of the whole thing. That's why it leads with devastating about what mindfulness was, because I know when I first learned about that's what I heard. Somebody came to me and said, man, they trying to teach us mindfulness, and that means you got to empty yourself out, and you know, and as Christians we should be emptying ourselves. I'm just telling you, you know, and so I was kind of, you know, I kind of do some research because I didn't know what it was, because all I heard was the whole yoga part, and you sit there and you drink with Genie and all that stuff.
So it of course it encompasses that as well, because the level of mindfulness helps you to become aware of your feelings, your thoughts, and your emotions, so that you can better process the environment that you're in and situations that you're handling. That's the overarching thing. But again, without taking up the absorb lift for the rest of the show, that's what mindfulness really encompasses: making sure you understand your thoughts, your feelings, and aware of your environment around you, so that you can better process how you interact. Because it's about controlling your emotions so that you can respond to situations and not react. So it brings you to a space of awareness in all of who you are. Because if we understand who we are as individuals, then we can respond, as opposed to not being aware of who we are, then we're reacting. Because when we get mad, we react. When we get things, we're reacting. But we're in a space of mindfulness and aware of who we are and how our emotions help impact our decisions. Then we're not reacting, we're more responsive, because now we're critically understanding, like, I know this gets me angry, but I'm going to respond in a way that's of my best interest. So mindfulness encompasses, you know, being aware of your thoughts, feelings, and your actions, so that you can be a better person in the present. And it puts you into the state of calmness in that, because now, whenever we're responding to something, we're more critically thinking through, even if it's a split second of how we handle that. But as opposed to if we're not mindful, then we're reacting, and then when we react, it's based off of pure emotion. And our emotions are not bad; they're not neither good or bad. They just are. But it's a way of understanding how do we again process and handle our emotions in a space that's both beneficial for us. So that's kind of the concept of mindfulness. But then it also lends itself into a space of meditative and yoga and calmness, that you can become self-centered. Not self-centered in an egotistical way, but self-centered in your energy, so that you can understand how to really balance that out and become more calm. And I'll stop and pause on this. A lot of people always say, you know, Jeff, you're so calm, you're so cool. It's not because I'm not, because I am. But it's really because I'm understanding how to relate to situations in a way that's a little bit focused on how I have to approach it. But there's sometimes I turn green, but just not in public.
I think it goes back to what you said. We talked a little bit about this last week. It's about knowing who you are.
Yeah.
I think when you know who you are, you know, you're not afraid to be different.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You know, like me, I used it to my advantage when I was playing sports. I was the agitator. You know, I was the guy to come out, man. My thing was, I look you in the eye, and if you look away, I got you.
Yeah.
You know, I was the guy, man, I'm gonna foul you the first time you touch the ball hard as I can, because that's how I see how you're gonna react. So I used to do it all the time, man. You know, the coach used to always laugh. So I'm gonna put one in the book right now. You know,
That must be that must be hereditary. That's hereditary. A little bit. He got a little bit like that. He talking a lot of trash.
Because I know I can get in your head. Because I know if you talking back to me, you're not playing your game.
Yeah.
Now you trying to come at me, you know, and I'm laughing. Now you're getting more agitated.
Look at his head. He's emotional.
But that's the same, you know. People do that in life. People figure out how to push your buttons.
Right.
People figure out, like, those kids in the class you had. You know, that's why I laugh. Because, you know, that's why I came in there and sat down. You see the whole demeanor change because I laugh at them.
Yeah.
You know, I don't, you know, I used to tell my kids, never let them see you sweat.
Mhm.
But most of us, we don't have that mentality because I'm not confident in who I am. So just to say something about me, I got to react to this.
Yeah.
You know, if Chris or Devin challenge me, I have to react to this. And I think that's the problem that the whole people I can see struggling in mindfulness because I'm not sure who I am.
Yeah, and the beauty of that too, Chris, was when you came in the first day, of course, the fifth graders, they were a bit active, right? They're a bit active, right? And I'm just saying that to say, had I not understood myself and my level of mindfulness in that place, say 10 years ago from now, I'd have probably went straight Joe Clark on all of them. Y'all gonna sit down, y'all gonna listen to me, y'all gonna do this. But because I understood, I understood myself and understood them and understood the environment, right? And I don't think you had a chance to circle back in, after it got started. But, it really got to a place where they were understanding what I was having to say because they knew that within me, I wasn't, responding or reacting, rather. I wasn't reacting to them, but I was just responding to the level of what I had to do in that environment. So they began to understand, like, wow, this guy, probably got something I got to listen to, right? So they came down as opposed to me escalating and going up. So, yeah, understanding all that comes into space of once they see that, then it's become something that they can adhere to. Now, hopefully, maybe one or two, if not all of them, took away some nuggets from that because of how I conducted myself. And I'm not bragging, but just showing the fact that the examples that we set before them, as the expression goes, they don't listen to what you say, they see what you do. And so maybe from some of what I did and the way I handled that situation can help them handle it as well. Because truly, when it first started, I was like, and I remember the old Jeff would have been, just had, but like now, just like, I know I have better tools to handle those situations. And that's what we're trying to give our community, to our youth, these tools to help them handle it. Because
I just remind myself how much I love my job. Nah, but okay, but see, let's move to the other side of that. How do we move adults to recognize that they need help? Because there's a lot of adults who need help and they don't recognize it.
And kind of tied into that, I did have questions about how do you come up with those resources that you feel as though our community needs, and how do you create those ties or networks there?
Yeah, so let me see. I'm seeing if I want to answer your question first.
You can answer this first. Go ahead, get this first. Go ahead, get this first.
Developing the resources, I look at it always like a three-pronged approach: educational, social, and political, right? So I look at how do we make sure we have the proper, economic connections in terms of not just, my thing has always been careers and not jobs, because jobs come a dime a dozen, and nothing against McDonald's, Chick-fil-A, Burger King, those are jobs, right? And even ShopRite. So when you look at places that are out there, like, we're having a job fair, I'm adamantly against job fairs. And the only reason why, because jobs are not sustainable. Careers are, right? When you talk about career readiness, you're talking about stepping into technical, business, entrepreneurship, something that's sustainable in our society, in our communities. Jobs are not. I mean, you look at some of the low-paying jobs that are out there.
But to automate a lot of those jobs.
Right. They're not only automate, they're not enough to sustain a household. So therefore, you could be working as a cashier, again, nothing against it. You can work as a cashier for McDonald's till you're 60, 65. But will you be able to leave your neighborhood with that job? Is that job on the trajectory to provide you with a career of ownership and prosperity in that regard? So I look at that economically, right? And then I look at partners who are going to come in and say, hey, how can we help economically improve our communities and our families and our youth? And then I look at it from the aspect of socially, right? What's happening in our communities, not just with the social justice aspect, but socially in terms of the structure of our communities and the opportunities that are there. And then politically, who's going to legislate and or provide ordinance and opportunities from the political aspect to get things moved along so that we can have the proper benefits and resources in our community. So those are like the three-layered approaches of how I look for bringing in partners to help our communities. And then mixed within that is the wellness part, like I talked about Dr. Jackie Johnson and all those others who are doing the important work of educating and healing our communities in that aspect. So those are the ways I look at partnerships in that capacity and bringing them in towards our community, because it's a bunch that are out there, and those are just a few that I named.
But we have to also instill the importance of education.
For sure.
And I don't mean, because college is not for everybody, so I want to make that 100%. There's people, I got friends who vocation make a lot of money, but if you can't count your money, that's a problem. Or I say this all the time, and this is probably why I don't get invited back when I'm on the symposiums. Like, we just need jobs, to your point, in the community. And I said, okay, so if I roll up with a tractor trailer full of jobs making 100 G's a year, who can qualify?
Right.
that's the issue. And I shouldn't come to you and say, well, Jeff, I need you to hire this guy just because.
Mhm.
You know, so we got to work this whole thing and not just get it, but how do you keep it?
Yeah, and
How do you
again,
keep it? How
yeah.
and how do you turn a McDonald's into a career?
Mhm.
You know, like I know a guy who owns a franchise now.
Mhm.
You know, he started out so that you can turn those into careers because everybody can't go out and get the job in the tech field. So how do we get people? And this goes back to the struggle.
Mhm.
How do we get people not to be comfortable with struggling? Because that's the problem. If I'm okay struggling, making minimum wage, why am I going to change?
Mhm.
It's something you talk about. We talk about trauma, the struggles,
Yeah.
with all that stuff like that. You gotta understand that's become some people's identities.
Yep.
Yeah.
I
And,
agree.
and no matter how many resources you provide with
Yep.
free counseling, which I think is amazing,
Mhm.
amazing, and having black counselors with Jackie's Black
Yeah.
Right,
Mhm.
having black counselors because it's hard to, it's gonna be hard to talk to a white counselor
Yeah.
honestly because they will never understand what you
Yeah,
want to tell them.
I agree.
But some people, it is their identity to be in the struggle,
Oh,
and they
I
don't want to
agree.
be of nothing other than that. As a matter of
Victimize
fact,
themselves, huh?
the mainstream has glorified our struggle and pain
Yeah,
from
I
the inner
agree.
city
Yeah.
and monetized it
Mhm.
and sold it back to us.
I agree.
That's end up putting us in a mindset that makes us want to kill each other all the time.
I agree.
Like I think it's funny that we rappers talk about selling drugs, pimping women, all type of illegal
Degrading
activities.
things.
But when you talk about date rape, then that's going too far.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying I think that's okay, but
No, I know
why is
exactly what you're
killing a
talking
black man okay? No, you can't. I rarely hear rappers talk about killing KKK members. I want to hear that song. That's the thing I'm gonna bump in my ride. You know what I'm saying?
That's the you get pulled over.
Right, but I'm saying though. But think about it. How come we don't got no music about that? It's always about
Well,
killing us.
Because this, like you said, I think people get content in their situations, and it becomes a norm. And for some people, those norms become dangerous.
Yeah.
Because I'm not going to do anything to change my norm. And I've had people tell me this, and because I'm a life coach, you know what? At least here, I know what my misery is. If I do that, I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow.
Yeah.
But here, I know what my misery is. I know what the things are wrong in my life. I can handle this. Will I handle tomorrow? Like some people are afraid to be successful.
Yeah.
You know, what happens if I become successful? Now I got responsibility.
I felt a fear of being successful to a certain level, so I get it from somebody who's not on my level. Like, cause I got a certain level of emotional intelligence to understand what will happen in different situations. I know if I do get to this level of comedy, I'm gonna have to deal with what Kevin Hart deal with, or what Steve Harvey deal with. You know what I'm saying? Or or
You
these
can hire
guys.
me and I'll slap you.
Hey man, get your together.
Anytime, let me bring you back to reality.
You want to pay me for that? Is that what I'm paying?
Yeah,
Is that
that'd be
what
my
I'm
job.
paying for?
But
I'm
yeah,
gonna send you to a mindfulness class.
No, but
But
that point is an excellent point.
Yeah.
And that's what I was talking about. How do you move people beyond? Because I'm okay with being miserable. You
because
know?
it's been normalized though, Chris. It's
Yeah.
been normalized through media, whether it's print, whether it's TV, whether it's social media. It's been so normalized to the point, like my brother said, people accept that's how it is for them.
Like,
And like the youth used to say, I don't know if they still say it as much. It is what it is.
Yeah.
But it's not. It is what it is because you have to open it up to opportunities. It's just like my friend Taj Murdoch. He has a program, Team Inc. And 3 things that he does. He talks about exposure, exposure, exposure. Exposure to different places, different people, and different opportunities. So when we do that, even on the adult level, give them those 3 levels of exposure, they will realize it's not is what it is, and there is opportunities for change. They no longer have to normalize their trauma. When we become to normalize our trauma, we sit in it, we soak in it, and we don't see anything better. And for me, it's just, again, making sure we can have those resources built in. The good thing you touched on also the educational part, because education is the key to unlocking all opportunities, as trite as that quote may be, but it's the truth. Because when we give that educational component, then we can talk about the other 3 aspects that I mentioned, which is politically, socially, economically. So we have to make sure that that educational piece is in there so that people will no longer normalize their trauma and begin to sit in it without seeing the opportunities of different people, places, and things that are out there for them to be able to be successful in. And that's why, with Greater Days Ahead Community Voice, we're lending ourselves to being in that space, so media, we're lending ourselves to being in that space so that people can see that trauma is not normal, even though there is a portion of trauma within all black people, just through the generational aspect of what the black people have been through in throughout history. So
Because we, for a large group of people, our people, we're abnormal.
yeah.
We're not normal. We're the exception to the rule. And I don't know if you picked up on it over there when we were in school.
Yeah.
You know, everybody, they look at me like I'm like, you know, like you're the only person like this in the whole wide world.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know,
Well, you know,
nobody's going to come in here and invest in us and talk to us and not fuss at us, not cuss at us.
I did, and it was funny because when I came there, they automatically knew I was your friend.
Yeah.
And, you know, not because I was black, because I guess it was just
That's
like,
you carry yourself.
there's another one.
There's two of them in here.
No, but then, right, it's like, it's
They
right.
gonna recognize it, man. They gonna recognize this.
Right, but then it was just like, you know,
No strip
okay,
necessary.
where are you from?
Yeah.
Because it's just like Chris or Mr. Pender is from this side. You got to be from that side because y'all can't be from the same place,
Yeah,
right?
yep.
And we became,
Yep.
in one of the words that you use a lot, the anomaly in the situation.
Yeah,
but it's
man.
not. We are no more special than the next brother or sister who's out there doing this work. But we have to just have those brothers or sisters be seen. And again, that's why I like this platform and the other platforms that I always mention, of course, my show, because we give platform and air to individuals who are doing this work, because we are not the only ones.
No.
You know what I mean? And I like my good brother here. You know, laughter is just such a beautiful thing. I mean, it's just such a beautiful thing to come into a space and be real with yourself, heal yourself, and help yourself. Laughter is one of those things. And my daughter, she says, live a little, laugh a little more.
But the other thing I like about Justin and comedians, because they can laugh at themselves.
Yeah.
And I think too many times we are, you know, especially people in our positions, you know, we can't laugh at ourselves. And if somebody else laughs at us, we get all upset.
Yeah.
Like, you know, we did the Hokey Cooking show, and everybody liked it because he made fun of me. And adults was like, man, you let him do that. It was no big deal to me.
Yeah.
And it's you know, I know who I am. I know our relationship. But there's people out there who think, man, you know, people are laughing. So what?
We just joke all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's as serious as it is. It's not that serious at the same time.
Right.
Man, my wife bossed me around all the time, man. If I had low self-esteem, I'd be in trouble. I'd be going around like this. I'm sorry.
Keep
I'm
it strong.
sorry.
I'm sorry, just saying I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
But you know what? You talk about comedians and laughter and stuff like that, and this kind of alludes back to like a callback from the beginning of the show. Like people think our people as a whole, not all of us, because we're clearly different. But our people think being vulnerable makes you weak, but that's actually a sign of strength.
It is.
And that's what makes me walk around so confident, because ain't nothing you can say is gonna hurt my feelings.
Yeah.
Like even if it do hurt my feelings, it's gonna hurt for a second before I come with a comeback. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm comfortable with who I am, and so many people like that are in the same profession are comfortable with it because they have to be.
Yeah.
They're putting it out for display for people to like it or not.
And that's me, and that's what I poured into my kids, man. Yo, be comfortable in your own skin, man. You know, because I always say this: you give people power when you worry about what they think and what they say, because you lose sight of your vision, your purpose, what you're trying to do. Because I'm so busy trying to worry about what they say, and most of the people who we worry about, they don't really care about you anyway. They living their life, man. They having a ball, and you sitting over there trying to figure out. So I think that's our, as we get close to the end, how do we pass it on to the next generation? You know, how do we get people to get past the point where I have adults who will tell me, I did it because so-and-so did it. You're grown. Or they sitting in front of me snitching on, well, you didn't say that Justin did it. Why didn't catch Justin? I caught you. You know, how do we move people to that point? Because I think the struggle is real. That's part of the struggle, because we got a lot of folk who don't know who they are.
One of the things I think to help move people to that space is the authenticity of our story. You know, stories resonate. We as Black people have lived through stories. The narrative of our oral history is always based on, built on stories. So the authenticity of our story really helps. One of the things that I've learned as a speaker is that I could prepare a speech and put all the slick quotes in it and all that, and that wouldn't really matter. Once I tell my story, I don't even need those quick quotes or anything like that. So it's the authenticity of our story and the transformational purpose of it, at the same time humanizing it, not to the place of, I've achieved here, now I got the S on my chest, and I'm flying and leaping over tall buildings. No, this is who I am, this is who I was, and this is who I'm still trying to be, but I'm helping you to become as well. You know, I am who I am because of who we all are, and our authentic stories have to resonate first in that human connection. And I've learned that, and I've learned that that's the most important thing. That builds a relational thing, as what Brother Justin talked about when we first came in. That builds that relational aspect of it. When we build that relational aspect of it, then we can start to see the disarming of any walls that are built up, false emotions, pride, and all that stuff. And so those authentic stories really matter the most, because people only care when they know that you care for them as well.
And as we close out, that's what it was with the drug dealer, the basketball coach.
Yeah.
It was just me simply going over there talking to him.
What was in this story? What happened?
Yeah, that was
Well,
around
we
50.
couldn't go to court at Rising Sun.
I thought it was a movie.
No,
but
we couldn't go to court up there, you know,
No, I remember.
and nobody would say anything to do.
Mhm.
You know, the councilman is right
They ended
there.
up helping, though. They
Yeah,
ended up coaching.
Yeah.
and you know, because I want everybody like, well, you know, he's not gonna get off the court. Well, did anybody ever ask him?
There was
They all look at me like, nah, man. You don't understand,
Mike,
Mike.
you ask him.
This is court. So I went over and I said, you got a second? And I was like, yeah. I said, you know, can we play here? You know, I understand that, you know, this is your court, you run the court. I said, well, you know, but these kids need a place to play. You know, we'll be done when I'm done, you know.
Yeah.
He was like, well, who you? So I told him my way. He said, you're not from Rice, I know, but we're trying to do something good in the community. And I turned around and pointed on him. So I was like, I said, well, why don't you do me a favor? Why don't you get involved? He was like, really? I said, yeah. You know, why don't you help out?
You just can't sell drugs right
You know,
now.
yeah, but they put. Let me tell you something.
Yeah.
They put a team in. He came up there. There were 0 fights.
Yeah.
It was better than the police.
The
That place was
yeah,
shut
yeah,
down
yeah.
till game time.
Yeah.
It was better than the police.
Yeah.
I mean, nothing happened. It happened before we got there and after we left. But the whole time we were there, you know, the cops were there doing nothing. You know, there were no littering. There were no fights.
Yeah.
They just he took and then just going over talking to him. You know, and so I think to your point, relationships was, you know, I mean. Literally, it wasn't his court, but it was his court,
Yeah.
and you have to respect that. You
Right.
was talking about and he got the power, he got the guns, he got the
Yeah.
troop, he had his army around him. You know, no, and he obviously didn't fear the cops, but I think we missed that simple humanistic touch.
Yeah.
Right.
So what's your closing thoughts, bro? When we go around Kristen and Doug.
Just this is about trauma and struggle is real. I think that we have to popularize healing, and the people that we admire and look up to have to do the things that they want the following generation to do. So
Yeah,
that's going to
I
therapy,
agree.
and they got to be going to therapy. I know, for me personally, seeing my pop go through what he went through with his diabetes, losing toes, all that type of stuff. He stopped being scared of therapy. Should I say? I didn't lost toes. I can go talk to somebody about it. Right, but just seeing him do that, and him being the strongest person I knew, let me know that was okay for me to do. So I think that's to happen on a macro level. I didn't know my story was just my story, but that needs to happen over and over again. And shout out to people like my uncle who are doing stuff like Big Brothers and Big Sisters, with people that's from in bad environments who don't have a positive male role figure where he stepped in at, and people like you who actually start the program, because I want to help too, but I don't know where to start sometimes. Sometimes you need a leader that has a passion.
Bring stuff.
That I'm gonna tag on what you're doing.
Oh, I got
what you
work
want me
for
to
you.
do? I know you do that. I should have said that. I should have said that. Check my
You
schedule.
know I got work.
No, but you too. You know what I mean?
I got
You
work.
do, you know, the same thing.
Yeah, and I like what you said, popularize healing, right? And not healed. Because there's a difference. Because if we just talk about healed, then that is too lofty of a goal for anybody to think that they can ever achieve. But if we talk about healing, it's a continuing process. So the fact that for me, I'm still being healed from my addiction of alcoholism, I'm still being healed from the generational and trauma of my childhood. I'm still being healed from that. Healing from that, I should say. I am not healed as if Ralph. I like the way you said popularize healing with the ing, not being healed. Because if we just put it at the end, then it's too aspirational, it's too lofty of a goal for the youth.
And it gives the impression that you won't get hit again. You
Right.
don't have to heal.
Right.
Like you will constantly, we're going
Right.
to constantly have to
Yeah.
healing. Like we're gonna,
Yeah.
the bumps and bruises, we got to heal from it.
Yeah, good point.
I'll be quick, but kind of just tied into what Justin was saying. Just challenge yourself to being more open and vulnerable. I know we talk about kind of opening up and going to therapy. For some people, that may be a challenge first. Start internally, locally. Like me and Justin, we talk a lot, you know, about anything and everything. Just opening up, and it's healthy to have, you know, that space or a person that you can go to. And just another thing to kind of go with that, we do have to change how we talk about therapy. I think that we don't have to talk about it as if you only go there when you have a problem.
Right.
I think the mentality that we need to start to have
Great point.
is it's just a healthy thing to do. Just as like if you want to get up and you want to work out because you want to take care of your body, it's good to go talk to a counselor just to keep mental, you know, healthy place here. So that's all
My last thoughts would more so be just the piggyback on the fact of know yourself. You know, like they said earlier, certain things you only allow certain things to affect you. If you let them get on your nerves, you have to know yourself, know your worth, And that way, you're able to move accordingly, and you're able to move through this world. So that's just my last thought. Just know yourself, know your worth.
I think as we close, this is something that took me a long time to learn, man. Control what you can control, you know, and know what you can't control. I think that's where people start to worry and drive themselves crazy, man, and you know, depression starts to set in because it is often over stuff that we can't control.
Yeah.
You know, so I think we have to learn, you know, control what you can control, and you know, pray about everything else, man, and you got to let it go. You know, I crack a joke sometimes in the ministry circle. I say it's like the person that goes up to the altar every Sunday for the same thing. You know, and the problem with it is when they turn around and go back, there's a string to it. They drag it right back down the aisle with them, man. Then, you know, we have to learn to let stuff go. And there's things that no matter what you do or how well you do it, that you can't control the outcome.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people struggle when I hear people talk about, you know, well, my dad did this, and I get all that. But at some point, you gotta let it go.
Yeah.
You know, you're 45 years old now. You know, you were 5. You know, I get the trauma, get it, but you can't move beyond where you are until you let it go. And I think a lot of times, and you can't go back and change it. You know what I mean? And we deal with stuff like we can go back and fix it. You know, and we can't. So, you know, there've been bad relationships. Let it go. You know, I sit down, I'm talking to, you know, young ladies, and they'll tell me, man, I dated this guy named Justin when I was, you know, 20 years old. No, I'm just doing all that.
I thought you were going to throw
out. But now you're 40 and you don't trust men. Well, you know, Justin probably had 10 relationships since then.
Right.
You know, so I think we have to learn, and it's easier said than done, but we have to learn to control what we can control and let stuff go.
Yeah.
And I think that's the key to our mental health, man. I think one of the keys, but I think everything said here, and I do like the healing part. I think too many times, you know, we think we're healed. You know, and we're not.
Yeah.
So, you know, I don't know why we rushed because we actually got time, but it's 8:29 because we control it. 20 miles, you know,
8:31.
But is anybody want to add anything else as we wrap up? You know,
it was just good show, good opportunity.
Good conversation.
Can you do me as a close? Can you do me a favor? Can you share some of those resources again?
Yes,
you mentioned
that's what I was
say.
therapy. You mentioned,
Yeah, sure. It's Dr. Jackie Johnson, Sankofa Healing Studios, and that's the website as well, sankofahealingstudios.com. Or .org, I'm not sure, but
Google.
But yeah, Google free.
you gonna really put them in therapy. This ain't working. This ain't working.
I'm trying.
How do I find Jeff Jones?
Crazy.
You see a greater days ahead.
I can't even get off the screen.
But other people who want to be stuck, man. Other people who want to be stuck.
So yeah, it's Dr. Jackie Johnson, Sankofa Healing Studios. My good friend Mike James from Budget Me, budgetme.com, helps with your finances. My good friend Connie Greer, she does educational and youth empowerment. That's from the Respect Alliance. Sharif El-Mekki, Black Male Educators Convening. And I believe I also mentioned, who else did I mention?
Your brother wrote a book.
Yeah, my brother James's book, I'm Alright. Check it out. It's on Amazon. You can get a copy. And also, I know my man Taj Murdoch, who has Team Inc., who helps empower communities and families in that capacity. And I also want to mention a good friend. She's also a therapist. She doesn't have any free sessions, but she's definitely a good therapist, Kivana Nixon, and she has her therapy session. She's a black woman, so if you want to go to a therapist, if you're a sister out there listening, or one of our young ladies, she's definitely great. Kivana Nixon, doing some therapy in that space as well.
Above average black men.
Yes, sir.
See that? Got it right.
Yes,
Empower,
sir.
inspire, uplifting community. I always want to say situate the positive. That's my old show. I got to get that out of my head. Yeah. But yo, next week, you guys got to tune in. Got to come back. Marcus Haynes is going to call in. And for some people who don't know who Marcus Haynes is, he writes for the Philadelphia Inquirer.
Right.
For those of you who don't know, that's a newspaper. People still read him. But also, he has a show. He's on Daily News Live. And he covers the Eagles beat. Yeah. Okay. And he has a show. And he writes some pretty interesting stuff, man. Some of his stuff is a little controversial.
I can't wait.